Hi, I'm Herb Redrick, the senior pastor here at First Missionary Baptist Church. Why do I have cross eyes? Because that's the series we're in right now. The purpose is that we want you to learn how to see everything just like Jesus saw it in your home, in your work, in the community. How did Jesus see things? So join us as we go through cross eyes all year long. Again, my name is Herb Redrick. Come on in and join us, and we pray you enjoy the message. As we continue our series, Seeing Generosity Through Cross Eyes, I'm going to go ahead on and give you my disclaimer each week, because I know anytime a preacher starts talking about how you spend your 3 T's, you know what those 3 T's are? Your time, your talent, and your treasure. Most of you are going to tune me out before you hear me out. And I know that to be true, so I'm going to go ahead on and serve notice now. But and I just know that's how it is. But I would be remiss if I didn't do what God has called me to do. And so as we continue this series, I want us to be mindful that I want you to learn more about what God wants for you than from you. And oftentimes when we think about our 3 T's, we're looking at it from a negative aspect. And it gives us a bad understanding of how generosity ought to be lived out. So as we will continue this series, I want us to stand on our feet. You should be able to find it in your bulletins, as well as coming up on the screen, our memory verse. And hopefully some of you have at least gotten the first few words down. And it's from 2 Corinthians, the 9th chapter, I believe that it is. And I believe it's verses 10 and 11. 2 Corinthians, the 9th chapter, verses 10 through 11. And we'll come from the NIV. And it should be in your bulletin. Who does not have a bulletin? Who needs a bulletin? Okay, all right. And hopefully it's also in your Bible. And then it should be coming up on the screen. And so I'm going to help you out and give you the first couple of words. And on 3, 1, 2, 3. Now, he... You may be seated in the presence of the Lord. How many of you have ever known anybody who's had just good intentions? You ever known anybody who's they got real good intentions. And I had this experience this past summer, and this is going to be really funny. Many of you might have remembered that after Sister Redrick and I came off of our month off, well, really I was off a month, she wasn't. She reminds you all of that often, that he's off for the month, I'm not. But anyway, when we got back off our last trip, I had the unfortunate pleasure of tearing up the front of my car, the bumper up under it. And I don't know, some of you saw it. It looked like the teeth were hanging out of it and everything. And, Pastor, what happened? Like, yeah, okay, that's a whole nother story. I don't have time to tell you that. But anyway, 2 of my trusted friends came to me and gave me some referrals of some individuals who could fix my car. Oh, they can do a great job, and you just be so pleased, and they're going to give you a great price. So I said, okay. So I actually went out and had both of them give me an estimate. And sure enough, one had good intentions, and the other one did a good job. And so this is where we find ourselves in our lesson text today. Open up your Bibles. We're going to be in the 2 Corinthians passage for the next several weeks. So I encourage you to read the entire chapter, and especially understanding these memory verses. Let's go to 2 Corinthians, the 9th chapter, and we're actually going to start at look at verses 3, and I think we'll go down through 5 there. And for those of you who have your trusted devices, I encourage you to pull down the app YouVersion. It's an excellent Bible application. It's got all different kinds of software, translations out there for you to follow us on. And then for those of you who are socially savvy, I want to encourage you to follow me on Twitter at Herb Redrick. And then for those of you who are visiting, we already like you, so I encourage you to go out to our Facebook page and like us. Excuse me. All right, so now, what did I say? 2 Corinthians, the 9th chapter. And let's start at verse number 3. And there we find these words. I am sending the brothers, I'm sending the brothers in order that our boasting, listen to this now, in order that our boasting about you in this matter should not prove hollow. You see that? But that you may be ready as I said you would be. Listen to the next verse. For if any Macedonians come with me and find you unprepared, we not to say anything about you, listen to this, would be ashamed for having been so confident. Final verse. Listen to what he says here. He says, so I thought it necessary. Now hear this. I thought it necessary to urge the brothers, listen to this, to visit you in advance and finish the arrangements of the generous gift you had promised. Then just lost it. Then it will be ready, right, as a generous gift, not as one grudgingly given. All right, so I want to talk about good intentions. Now, to understand this passage here, you have to understand what was going on. Paul was coming to Corinthians, and he'd gotten a message from some of the brethren, Titus and some of the other brethren, that the folks in Corinthians who had made a promise a year ago. Anybody ever made a promise a year ago? Yeah, and promised that I'm going to do this for you, I'm going to do that for you, and you boast about it, and you told everybody about everything that you're going to do, and so they had made this great promise for a collection that Paul was encouraging them to take up for the church in Jerusalem. Now, this offering to Jerusalem served two purposes. It was a charity offering, and also it would have helped them bond the relationship between Jews and Gentiles. And so Paul had got them all excited about making this offering, and they boasted and made pledges and said that they were going to give lots of money. And the folks in Corinth, they were well-to-do people. Oh, they had Lexuses and they had Mercedes, and they lived in nice houses, in gated communities. They had pensions. Oh, they were just doing great. And then he also talked to these folks in Macedonia. They weren't all well-to-do people. In fact, they were hard-working people who didn't have many resources. And so Paul had appealed to both of these Gentile communities to make this offering for him to be able to collect it and take it to Jerusalem. And so when Paul got ready to come to to Corinth, he found out that many of them were not ready, that they had not done what they said they were going to do. They had what? Say good intentions. Good intentions. They had real good intentions of doing what they said they were going to do. So in this third verse here, Paul says to them that he's going to send a team ahead of them to check them out, because they've been telling everybody, oh, the folks in the folks in Corinth, they're going to give a big offering to the Jerusalem church. And I know that they can do it because I know they got it. I'm talking about, y'all looking at me like I'm talking about y'all. I'm talking about the church. Y'all getting all edgy and everything. Like, he's talking about us. Did I say Concord? I meant the church at Corinth. And so here he is now. He's encouraging them, but he's also in a way chiding them by saying he's going to have to send what would you call that group? Some spies maybe, or some encouragers, or some a posse. I don't know what you would call them, but he was sending them ahead to make certain that they had done what he had asked them to do. He says, we've been boasting about you, and we would not want our words to come up hollow. Do you know what it means when it says hollow? Empty. I mean, that wasn't really a complex word, was it? What does hollow mean? Yeah, he means he doesn't want them to come up empty. He does not want his words to be in vain. And so he's saying to them now that your words and your deeds must be congruent. That's your first cross-eye perspective here, that your words and your deeds should be congruent. Now, what does congruent mean? It not only means you're going to do what you say, but you're going to do it for the reason you said that you're going to do it, and the time that you said you're going to do it, and why you say you're going to do it. See, sometimes we do things, why? Because someone pressured us to do it. We didn't really want to do it, but we just did it. So that's really still not congruent with your words and your deeds. And oftentimes we're doing things because others ask us to do them, and we're not really doing it from our heart. And so Paul is saying here that when he comes, he does not want his boasting about them to be hollow, because these are words that they had committed, that they said they were going to do. He didn't require it of them. He's asking them to give this free will offering. Are y'all walking with me that far? And because of that, he's saying now that your words and your deeds need to be congruent. Would you agree with that? Yeah. Otherwise, it's just what? It's good intentions. It's just good intentions. Good intentions. So now let's look at the next verse here. As he's told them now that their words and their deeds must be congruent, he says, now, if any of the Macedonians come to Corinth with me, and again, he's pressing them about these Macedonians who are coming. Now, the reason he's putting this before them is because he's already got the collection from the Macedonians. And if you go back and you read chapter 8, you'll see that the Macedonians not only gave sacrificially, but they gave spontaneously. And they gave more than just money. They gave themselves. You see, generosity, it doesn't start, and I'm going to tell you this later, I'll go ahead and tell you now, it doesn't start with the head, it starts in the heart. Don't put that up there, now we'll come back to it. But he's saying that the folks from Macedonia, even as poor as they were, they gave more than he ever expected. Do you know that in surveys now in America and even across the world, that your most generous people are those who have less? In fact, the more you get, the harder it is for you to give. And how many of you have ever said this? Now watch this. Don't raise your hand, because I know you played a lottery. I know that you do. I know that you do. But many of you say, boy, if I hit the lottery, I can come out there and ask you, and the first thing you say, I'll give some money to the church. You're not giving now. Why would you give then? You know, if somebody laid a big fat check of $100 million on you, you're like, ooh, right? Good intentions, right? You got good intentions. I know right now, if I were to ask all of you, you got good intentions. You say, Pastor, if I hit the lottery, this is what I will do. Yeah, this is what I would do. Good intentions, good intentions. He's talking to the church of Corinth, y'all. Don't get all nervous. He's talking to the church of Corinth, all right? And so he says, if I bring any of the folks from from Macedonia over here, all right, and they come with me, he says, I don't want them to come and they start talking about you and we can't say a word. You know, because we're looking and the baskets are empty. He said, it would be a shame for us not to be able to say anything. He says, because if we come and find you, now listen to the word he used. In verse 3, he says that you would be ready as I said you would be. But in verse 4, he says that if I bring the Macedonians with me and they find you unprepared. He's really saying that ready and unprepared are opposites. He's saying, I want you to be ready, not unprepared. Now, how is it that you become prepared to be generous? Now, see, here's some reasons. Can I just talk to you plain? Here's some reasons. Let me give you some reasons why we are sometimes unprepared to be generous. One reason is because we're focusing on the land of Ur. Y'all ever been to the land of Ur? Bigger, better, brighter, bolder, newer. Yeah. How many of you, don't raise your hand on this. How many of you know folks? Well, you can raise your hand on this. How many of you know folks that get the new phones when they come out? Just because they new. Yeah, you know folks. See, yeah, I'm not saying that you are those folks. I'm just saying you might know folks. Every time a new phone, because I got a son. He got a drawer full of phones. All of them work. I said, what's wrong with them? Nothing. Well, why'd you get? I just wanted the newer phone or the newest. I said, but in 6 months, I said, the minute you buy that, it's old. Did you know the minute you buy a car, a phone, a house, it's old? Now here's something. Let me just give you some breaking news here. Nobody drives a new car. Once you get it, it is a used car. Everybody drives a used car. So don't be talking about I got a new car. It was new until you sat in it and drove it off the lot. In fact, if you go right back 5 minutes after you got it, he can't give you what you paid for it. All right? So he's saying here, so one of the reasons we're unprepared to be generous is that we're focusing on the land of Ur. All right? Now, another reason that we're usually unprepared to be generous is because we don't plan for the future. Okay? We don't budget our time. We don't budget our talent. We don't budget our treasures. And so when it comes time to being generous, we haven't planned for it. But here's one of the biggest reasons of all the other three I wanted to give you: the fear of the future. The fear of the future. Most of you figure, well, if I get that up, what happens if something happens to me? Right? You want to have a little bit put back, don't you? You're afraid that if you give, then, and if you make that commitment, now you had good intentions, but then you started looking at your own life and you heard about someone else who's gotten laid off, and you listen to the news, and you can become all nervous about what the future holds, and you can become so fearful that you become paralyzed and you'll do nothing. Might have happened. And here's the thing: the more you have, the more fear you have, because you know what? The more stuff you got to protect. Think about it. If you didn't have 2 cars, you wouldn't have to protect 2 cars, right? Yeah. And you got 401k and you got all these assets that become liabilities. Did you hear what I just said? Assets become liabilities because they cause you to start worrying about all the stuff you have. All the stuff. We got insurance on top of insurance. How many of you got what you call a blanket policy? You don't even know it. Yeah, that's a policy to cover the policy to cover the policy. You just want to make certain that if I forgot to cover something in the policy, I got a policy that covers that policy. Yeah. Why? Because you fear the future. Now, let me just give you a little sidebar here. We shouldn't fear the future if we know the one who holds the future. How many of you know the one who holds the future? Yeah, all right, it's one thing to know him. How many of you trust the one who holds the future? So you got to trust the one who holds the future. And then the Bible tells us tomorrow has enough trouble of its own. Now, if you plan and you've done all the planning that you can do, then you can stop worrying about the things you can't control. Do you know 90% of the stuff you fear never happens? 90%. So just write down all the stuff that you fear. And just say, okay, I can scratch off all of this. And probably the stuff that you worry about, the chances of it happening are so remote. unless you're just living on the edge. Do you see that? So he's saying, I don't want you to be unprepared. I want you to be ready when I come. And so here's your second cross-eyed perspective. A generous person prepares to be generous. A generous person prepares to be generous. Okay? You have to prepare to be that way. But now here's the last one I want to talk to you about. Notice now, in this 5th verse, he says, so I thought it necessary to urge the brothers to visit you in advance and finish the arrangements of the generous gift. Look what he says now. You had what? Promise. Again, what? Good intentions. That's what a promise is, isn't it? It's good intentions. Aren't you glad that God doesn't operate just on good intentions? Aren't you glad he follows through on every promise? Every promise he's made, the answer is yes to every promise he's made to us. Notice now, he says over and over in this verse, he's going back in these 3 verses, he's going back and forth in his having to send people because we're not ready. I mean, the folks in Corinth aren't ready to make their contributions like they had promised, and they're going to be unprepared. Aren't we so grateful? We've been celebrating our church anniversary for 137 years. Isn't it a blessing that we stand on the shoulders of many of those who were continuously prepared and who were faithful over all kinds of adversities? You know, we have been through world wars, we have been through recessions, we have been through depressions, and we're still here because they were faithful and they were generous in all of their giving. And so here we have the opportunity to continue that legacy, but they're counting on us to be able to leave something for our children, but we can't live in a world where we're unprepared. Notice now. He's urging them. And notice what he says he wants them to finish. He says, I want you to finish the arrangements of, he didn't just say the gift. What gift did he say he wanted them to finish? The generous gift. So it's not as one that is grudgingly given. And we're going to talk about this in a couple of weeks. But notice now, he gives generous and grudgingly. Now, some of us, I know you just give because you saw somebody else put something in the back. Oh, I got to put something in there because they did. Oh, boy. And then you look at it real hard. And you start thinking about, what was this is my lunch money. I was going to go to the movie. And, oh, boy, here come that basket again. And yeah, some of you gotten smart and start waving your phone over because you've seen me do that like you're giving through text. All you're doing is just waving your phone. You're just acting like you've done something. You're like, Yeah, we're going to get a chip that just starts sucking it right out of your phone the minute, then you wave it over there like, how did that get out of there? So remember I talked about your giving being congruent? This is what he's talking about here. He's saying here that you can't give generously and grudgingly at the same time. In fact, I've been using some oxymorons, like there should be no such thing as a jealous Christian, right? We talked about that, right? That's an oxymoron. We talked about a stingy Christian. That's an oxymoron. We talked about an angry Christian. That's an oxymoron. Well, if you have good intentions and you don't follow through, that's a lousy Christian. Is that an oxymoron? I say yes, I hope so. Yeah, y'all looking like, no, that's what most of us are. We're just lousy. He's saying your attitude matters. And what he's talking about here is not a head condition. He's talking about a heart condition. He's talking about your will and your motives and what your desires and what moves you in doing so. Now, some gifts are really easy for us to give. How many of you got children or know some children? How many of you ever bought a birthday gift? Yeah, for somebody you like. You get really excited about that, don't you? And in fact, you get more excited about their opening the gift than you did when you bought it. Go ahead, open it. And have you ever seen kids at a birthday party? They want to help the person open the gift. Why? Because they're excited. This is what he's talking about. He's saying we ought to have that kind of excitement when we're giving. We ought to be really excited when we're giving. Yeah, I mean, y'all, some of y'all, I just can't wait to get to church to give. I knew that's the look I was going to get. He done lost his ever-loving mind. That's not why I rushed here to get here. But this is what he's talking about. He's saying that it ought to be a generous gift, that it ought not be one grudgingly given. So let me give you your last cross-eyed perspective here. He's saying here now that generosity starts in the heart, not in the head. All right? Generosity starts in the heart, not in the head. It's a heart condition. And didn't we couple of weeks ago, did we not learn that we're made in the image of God? Do you and y'all remember that? Whose image? That's why we've been singing that song, More Like Him. And y'all were singing, more like Him, more like Him. That's right, I didn't get the choir rehearsal, so don't be judging me, as the young folks say. But notice now, everyone is made in God's image and in his likeness. So everyone represents God. The question is, how do we represent him? Now, because we're calling ourselves redeemed children, if you're redeemed, if you have accepted that Jesus lived, that he died, that he rose from the dead, then we're saying that we ought to be the best representatives of God, right? In other words, because we said the words likeness and image means resemble and represent. And so we represent him best when we resemble him best when we represent him well. We resemble God best when we represent him well. And the more we represent him, the more we resemble him. And the more we resemble him, the more we represent him. And so we represent God everywhere we go. So God is a loving God, so what should we be? God is a kind God, so what should we be? God is a forgiving God, so what should we be? God is a faithful God, so what should we be? God is a long-suffering God, so what should we be? God is a generous God, so what should we be? All right, y'all catching on. Yeah, because we represent him. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son. He did it. It was his heart. He loved us. And so we're to love in that same way. And what more generous way that God could give? And on last week, we learned in Malachi, it says that if we would just test God, that he would show himself to be more generous than we are. He says if we give him the first tenth of what he has already given us, he's going to give you more. So in other words, God is showing you what he wants for you instead of what? From you. But most of the time when you hear teaching on the time, oh, there they go again. They want my money. They want my money. They want my money. But no, it's really you that's losing out. How many of you want to be blessed by God? Come on. Yeah, come on, raise your hand high. Come on, put that on the camera. You want to be blessed by God. Yeah, but you don't want to trust him. See, you can't have the blessings without the trust. Okay? And what he's looking for, remember we said there's general blessings and then there are covenant blessings. The sun and the rain. Did the rain fall on any of you on here? I was walking outside and it was raining. Now I better not say that on camera because it was not raining on this brother. It was raining on me. So I was wondering, how did he work that out? See, God doesn't work like that, does it? No. If it's raining here, it's going to rain on all of us, the just and the unjust. But then God has covenant blessings for those who he is in a covenant relationship with. And that's why we said a month or so ago, favor ain't fair. We said that's poor English, but that's good theology. Right? Okay. So, Here's your last one. Did I give you your last one? Did I tell you your third one? Yeah. All right. So now, let me give you some powerful reasons. 3 powerful steps. How many of you want to become generous people? Let me say it this way. How many of you want to become more generous people? I saw some of you were afraid. Yeah, you want to become more generous, right? Say, yeah, raise your hand high if you want to become more generous. Real high. Wave it like that. Yeah, yeah. Wave it in the air like you just don't care. Okay, all right. All right, so I'm going to give you three steps. Now, there are probably many more, but if you will adopt these 3 steps here, all right, this will help you become a generous person. Let me show you how a person becomes generous. The first thing a generous person does, a generous person, or if you want to become a generous person prays to be generous. Remember now, we're made in God's image, right? And so if we're made in his image, didn't we just say God is generous? Did we not say that? All right. And so if that's part of God's DNA, guess what? It's a part of our DNA. Do you know why many of us are stingy and not generous as we want to be? That's part of the curse. That's part of sin. And because of sin, it has corrupted our generous DNA gene. But if you pray for that, God can redeem and restore any and everything. So you have to pray to be generous. Now be careful for what you pray for. Because God will bring you an opportunity to be generous. And you say, oh God, I didn't mean that soon. I thought we were going to have a generous plan, something I could work up to. Yeah, so just be careful. But if you're serious, then you're going to pray for that. Okay? Now, the second thing that to be generous, a generous person creates margin to be generous. Now, what do I mean by create margin? All right, here's the thing. If you're living on the edge of your finances and on your time and on your talent, and you don't take out a planner and plan how you're going to spend your money and plan how you're going to spend your time and plan how you're going to allocate your talent, you're going to always find you don't have enough of anything to do anything generous. Because here's what's going to happen now. If you start setting margins, all right, if you start setting room in your schedule to be generous, God's going to also bring you opportunities to be generous. Not just with money. Watch this. How many of you ever been at work and you get that coworker that you just don't like? Yeah, don't raise your hand on this one. But then one day, that coworker will come to you with their heart in their hands and want to ask you a serious life question. And if you haven't created margin in your life, you're going to say, I'm just too busy right now. Can we speak some other time? Or you may not even recognize that they're really trying to hear a word from God. And guess what? Didn't we just say we're made in his image? So everywhere we are, is there ever a time we're not representing him? And if you're doing a good job at work representing him, even folks who don't like you, if they feel you got an answer to their problems, they're going to come and ask you. Now, some of you say, but I can't tell them about Jesus at work. Yes, you can. The minute they come into your space, it's fair game. It's not that you went and took it to them and beat them over the head with the Bible. But no, the minute they start asking, you can tell them about your faith. See, this is where most of us get all twisted. Well, I can't talk about Jesus at work. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. Yeah, so you have to create margin. And here's the third one. What did I say? The first one was pray, right? What's the second one? All right, what's the third one? Oh, yeah, I know what it is. Generous people fast to be generous. Now, some of you may not know what fasting is. Just because you missed a meal didn't mean you fast. That meant you just missed a meal. Okay, yeah. Fasting is intentional. Okay, that's the first thing fasting. It is and you can fast from many things. And so I'm gonna give you a list of things to fast from. Before I give them to you, if you miss them, we're gonna put them out on Facebook one at a time this week, or you can follow me on Twitter, and I'll have them out there this week as well. But let me give you the first one to do on Monday. Wear your glasses. That's the first one. No. I just here's the first one. Now, this one may be hard for you, but you can do it. I want you to fast from breakfast. Now, if you got to take some meds, I'm serious. Eat your little something. Don't eat the whole buffet. Eat your small something so you can take your medicine. But fast from breakfast, and then here's what I want you to do. I want you to pray for somebody who you know is in need and ask God to show you how to help them. Okay? Do that on Monday. All right? All right, here's the one for Tuesday. Now, this one's going to really mess some of you up because you won't even be able to check in with me on Tuesday. So I may not even post anything on Tuesday because I want you to fast from social media. All right? I want you to fast from social media. And here's what I want you to do at that time. I want you to really physically go see somebody or pick up the phone and call them. Call one of our seniors. Call somebody who's sick and shut in. Pray with them. That's being generous with your time. Okay? Here's what I want you to do on Wednesday. I want you to fast from TV. I heard somebody say, oh, God. Didn't know it was that bad. Didn't know it was going to be that hard. If you need counseling now, we will be able to provide. Woo, that was, okay. I don't even know what to tell you to do with that one. What did I have down here? Yeah, just pray the whole time then for that person that you don't. Do a good deed somewhere. Volunteer somewhere. People are watching 4 to 6 hours of TV a day. A day. Redeem some of that time for the Lord. There's only so many reality shows you can watch. Say yes to the dress. Yeah, I know it's out there. 90 Days the Other Way. You can't wait to get home to see that last edition of 90 Days. This is your last night to get it. You better get it in. Thursday. Now, this one may seem a little more difficult, but fast from being first. Now, watch this. When driving, slow down and let someone in front of you. When you're in the store, don't race to get into the line. When you're leaving out the parking lot, let's practice that on your way out today. Help the campus care team out and allow them to let someone go in front of you. Most of you drop your religion at that double door right there, and then we see it come out of you. Yeah. I should have put that for Sunday, shouldn't I, Brother Fan? I in fact, do that one today and Thursday. Practice it today, preferring someone else. If you're married, prefer your spouse. Watch her show during the football game. Ouch. But most of y'all got DVRs, and they're going to have it on Sports Center, and there's only about 4 or 5 plays in the game you need to see. You don't need to watch all 60 minutes of it. Right? It's only about 4 or 5 plays everybody's going to talk about. Nobody's going to talk about 3rd down and 9 when they didn't make it. In the first quarter, nobody's going to talk about that. Yeah. So prefer your spouse. Yeah, I heard some grumbling over here. It's going to be that's going to be that hard. It's like, That's being generous. Now here's one. I saved this one just for this day and this day alone. On Friday, what you think I want you to fast from? Eating out. Woo! And if you just take what most of us spend on a Friday night, take that and give it to a charity. And see how that makes you feel. See how that makes you feel. Because here, if you don't remember anything else, here's what I want to help you remember. Good intentions are not good enough. All right? Good intentions are not good enough. And this is what Paul was telling the church at Corinth. And he's telling us today. And the Bible actually tells us, I think it's in Ecclesiastes, the 5th chapter, verses 4 and 5, if my memory serves me correctly. He says, it's better not to vow than to make a vow and don't keep it. Did you hear what I just said? It's just better to tell a person, I'm not going to do it, than to tell them you're going to do it and then renege on doing it. Okay? Why? Because we represent God. And God never tells us he's going to do something and renege on doing it. So if we're going to be his representatives, if he's generous, we must be generous. Amen? Amen. If you would stand on your feet with me. I hope you enjoyed the message today. And just as we promised you earlier, I hope that it was allowed you to get connected to Christ and his community, where you can be radically changed for Christ by Christ. Now, we would like for you to stay in touch with us. So please follow the web address on the bottom of the screen here. Go out to our website so you can connect more with us. Also, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you like what we're doing at first, support us financially. And you can also do that by hitting our giving link. We thank you so very much. And again, I'm Herb Redrick, Senior Pastor at First Missionary Baptist Church. When you're in the area, stop by and see us. Bye-bye.